Welcome back to NTV Weekend Edition. This is Talk of the Nation. The question of language of instruction in lower primary remains a critical challenge in Uganda. Consequently, the National Curriculum Development Center are considering shifting the emphasis from mother tongue to the most commonly used tongue in an area as the language of instruction. This is hoped to improve how best to teach children at lower levels in a country with so many languages. However, it appears sufficient preparations have been made for teaching Swahili at all levels throughout the country beginning next year. To share with us some insights into the matter, we have Grace Baguma, the director of the National Curriculum Development Center, and she joins me right now in studio. A very good evening and thank you for coming.
Good evening.
So first off, why is the government interested in making local language the national form of instruction right there, when English already is the official tongue that we are using right now in Uganda? When you're writing your CV, it's in English. So why the local languages?
Local languages are a critical dimension in terms of intellectual abilities and cognitive growth in a child, because local languages are the languages that are spoken to the child when this child is still in the mother's womb, even as an early baby. The mother has a language that keeps on speaking. Even as you breastfeed your child, you are speaking. And certainly, you speak a language that is a local language, if we want to use the word. So English, yes, is an official language, but English is a foreign language. It's not a language of Uganda. Our constitution provides for 66 languages of Uganda, and that's the reason research has shown that we must grow them and have them used in acquiring, for children to acquire competences or skills or knowledge at an early age, even before they go to school. If we look at 0 to 3 years, who is mainly with these children? They are in the home, and in the home there is a language spoken, and the children acquire the language skills of that particular. It could be Lumasaba, for example, or Runyoro Toro, or whatever. So they come with they have a language that they learn first, and in the scientific we call it the first language that you acquire as a child. And that's the reason why we in education, and because of the research that we've had, feel that it is very, very important that you begin to teach me concepts of science, concepts of RE in a language that I understand and that my mother has been speaking to me.
Grace, what about the argument that government is moving into this area because some teachers right there are poor in communicating and teaching English? Why not stick to English then?
You can, before there are principles. Before you begin to use a language, you must have a command of about 500 words. You must be able to have the words to speak, the vocabulary. Have you gathered enough vocabulary for you to be comfortable to use English, for example? So even the teachers, I don't know, that is a theory that they do not know the English, but they have gone through a system where they have spoken English, they have been taught in English, and English is the official language. But our argument as curriculum developers is that at an early age, don't start me off bombarding my brain with English, and I'm battling with it with the language that I speak in my home. That becomes a bit complex and makes the learning, the cognitive growth, the intellectual growth, it gets affected, because there is a lot of battle that goes on in the child's head as you are battling to understand English, but you know your language that you've been speaking at home. So we are talking about a gradual acquisition of the English language skills. Then you can be comfortable when they use them as a medium of instruction for you. And that is the vocabulary. You have enough vocabulary, you have enough full structures, and you've picked it by P4, because the policy is clear. English is taught as a subject right from P1, but a language that is familiar to you is used to teach you right from P1, and it has to be a local language, or even English in some communities where we have a multiplicity of languages. But also the policy went ahead to guide and said, if 80% of the children in the school speak a certain language. Then the school management committee and the head teachers would pick on that language, because children can easily, the 20% can easily get assimilated in the 80% who are speaking a given language in that community, and we use it.
Now, there have been challenges when it comes to getting local language teaching materials around the country. How far are we going to make these available?
Some of the discussions that you came to us yesterday when we were having our conference, we are looking at the instructional materials. They have been provided by the government and with support from development partners, and we want to see how sustainable that can be. And therefore, we are looking at, can we pick on major area languages? We are going to consult widely with the communities to see whether, if we picked on the major languages, and I think the discussions yesterday we are looking at 10 to 12, and we got materials, because for the children and the children, we have the materials, and where the materials have been provided, the results are very, very good, because the children have been able, because what we are targeting here in this particular intervention, and especially the use of local language or mother tongue as a medium of instruction, is for the children to acquire literacy skills.
For the students to acquire
the
literacy
literacy skills in terms of speaking, reading, listening. Those
so a local
skills.
language would somehow help a child learn English in that way, because the explanation would be in a local language.
The explanation would be in a local language, but you are learning English as a subject. You are still acquiring the vocabulary. But when you are fluent enough in your local language, what we call L1, you are able to pick on language 2, which is L2, which would be English in this case, very, very easily. Because the basic skills that you've acquired at this level, and you already have an advantage because you've been speaking this language and playing with it in your home, in your community. So to pick the skills of speaking or the skills of English language becomes easier.
I get the point.
That's the theory.
Yes. Now, there are areas of the country where we use, several languages, like Kasese, Busia, and so on. How do you handle this in that area where they use several languages?
As I said earlier, you are looking here at the majority of the children, what language, because we have some of our border areas where they speak Kiswahili, and Kiswahili therefore becomes the medium of instruction. In the barracks, and I think Kasese has some of the schools that speak Swahili because of the Congo, neighboring the Congo. So the school, again, as I said earlier, picks on the 80% of the children, the language that is spoken by 80% of the children in the school. As a medium of instruction, I want to insist on that, because they are still learning English as a language. And when we think they are comfortable enough with it by P4, then we call it transition.
You call it transition?
Yes.
So what about in areas where someone of another community is working in an area where his or her language is not being used, like Mnyankore in Gulu and Anacholi in Jinja? How do you plan to teach their child?
In Anacholi in Jinja,
Anacholi in Jinja and Mnyankole in Gulu. So how do you plan? In what language do you plan to have their child learn?
When you produce this child and you are living in Jinja, this child has children they play with who are speaking Lusoga. And you will be surprised how they come to speak Lusoga in your house.
Yes.
These children will be talking to the neighbors and will be hearing a certain language going on.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And
Ms. Baguma, we've run out of time, but do you anticipate any problems before we go?
Some of the challenges, of course, are for us to provide adequate instructional materials. And indeed, some of the languages have not developed their orthographies very well. Some of them have the materials, the literature. And of course, this has been over the time, is not adequate. But we are encouraging and sensitizing our communities through the language boards to make sure that the materials for these languages are developed.
Thank you, Ms. Grace Baguma. She's the director of the National Curriculum Development Center. Thank you for making, us understand more what is happening right there at the National Curriculum Development Center.
Very much.
Yes, you're still watching NTV Weekend Edition. We are going to take a very, very short breather, but do stay with us. We have a lot more in store for you.